Good evening to one and all. On behalf of KCG College of Technology and Institutions Innovation Council, I welcome all the participants for this session on IPR and international filing procedures, policies, and IP laws. So this event is being organized in view of the World Intellectual Property Day, so which is observed annually on 26th April. So the day was established by the World Intellectual Property Organization in 2010. So just to raise awareness on what is patents, what is copyrights, what is trademarks, and how to file IPRs in respective countries. Okay. So now I request our principal, Dr. Devasundari ma'am, to address the participants of this session.
Thank you, Lakshmipati. Good evening to all. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us today. I'm also very pleased to be able to welcome those who have joined us today, external participants and our IP cell coordinators who have joined today for this World IP Day program. Before we get started, I would first like to express my sincere appreciation to the IPR cell as well as IIC for organizing this program today and getting a resource person like sir to enlighten us with all the IP related queries. And as we all know, April 26th is the day on which the World Intellectual Property Organization's convention came into force in 1970, and it has been designated as World IP Day with the aim of increasing general understanding of intellectual properties. And that is one reason behind why we every year organize this, so that our internal faculty and our students and our startups, they all want to learn about this IP. They should be aware of all these IP. And this year, WIPO has given a theme as IP and SME, that is taking your ideas to market. That is the actually the theme given by WIPO this year for 2021. And SMEs, we know they are the engines and the unsung heroes of our economy, and for many of them there is still a lack of knowledge about how IP can help them translate their ideas into products, and how IP can be a powerful tool for them to not just survive but also to compete and grow. And if you know that WIPO's Director General, Mr. Tang, in his address for this year, he has described the reason behind fixing this theme also. He quotes that whatever help we can render to our SMEs will be the help that we render to the bedrock of our economy, and also it is going to be the backbone of the global economy. Ultimately, it will help our world to build back better after the pandemic. I think this is one of the best theme for this year, and we have our TBI in house, and we have many of our startups who wanted to know about IP. So I think it's a right move that we have organized this, and we have Sir with us today. With that note about the day, I wholeheartedly welcome all our chairperson, Dr. Elizabeth Verghese, Director and CEO, Dr. Anand Jacob Verghese, Director Dr. Annie Jacob, and all the other directors who have been a great support always with every initiative we take. We also have our chief guest, Mr. GMK Raju, who is a very well recognized IPR expert, advocate, and law advisory on technology laws, IPR, and he is also a resolution professional. So we were also informed by Mohan sir about the phenomenal work you have carried out with ICSR IIT Madras in helping them set up their IPR processes and protocols. I'm sure your address today will enlighten all of us, especially as students, student startups, and all our faculty. It's my pleasure to welcome you, sir, for today's program.
Thank you, ma'am, for the wonderful invitation. It's my pleasure to be amongst you all today evening to share some of the knowledge that I have gathered in my 7 years that I spent at IIT Madras, putting together the IP cell and then creating awareness and then connecting it up to startups. So I'm ready. So good evening to all the faculty and students of KCG College. I hope that over the next 45 minutes to 1 hour, I'm able to transfer a lot of what to you all in this period. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And
all our heads of the departments, my colleagues, my students, and all the external participants who have joined today. Thanks for joining. I'll not take much of your time. So once again, a very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you, Lakshmipati. We can.
thank you, ma'am. And our institution actively files many IPRs over the years. And we have a short video on our accomplishments on the number of patents filed and the number of patents granted. So I request Mr. Pavan to play the short video. Thank you, Pavan. Now I request Ms. Brinda Shakti to introduce the chief guest.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I extend a warm welcome to our chief guest and all the participants who accepted our invitation. I find immense pleasure to introducing our honorable chief guest, Mr. G. M. K. Raju sir. He is an advocate, law advisory with good technical knowledge in corporate law, insolvency law, technology law in IPR and other business laws. He is an resolution professional registered with Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. He is an independent director registered with IICA and law associates across Chennai, Hyderabad, Bangalore, and Bhubaneswar. And coming to the qualifications, he has completed BTech Mechanical Engineering at IIT Madras, and his passion towards law have made him to undergo executive development at Carnegie Mellon University and Master of Investment and Financial Analysis, and also completed his LLB at Karnataka State Law University, and also completed Master of Business Law at National Law School of India University. And also he is a consultant, advisor, a trainer at various institutions and sponsored research center. He has done phenomenal work with ICSR, IIT Madras in helping them set up their IPR process and protocols. He is an alumnus of IIT Madras. He has served various positions in including customer service manager, production manager, and factory manager, etc. We are very much grateful to have you, sir. Thank you for your time to spend out of your busy schedule to attend this webinar. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Brinda, for introducing the chief guest. Now I request Mr. Murali Krishna Raju, our resource person of the day, to take over the session.
Thank you. I'll just set up the presentation and then start off. Yeah, I just want to check if the screen you're seeing is the first page of my presentation.
Yes, sir.
Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think Principal had already introduced today as World IP Day, 26th April 2021. So I propose to first take you through a brief overview of the different IPs that are recognized in law, and then proceed on to patenting and then discuss that in a little more detail, and then come to the aspects of policy. And of course, nothing on IPR is complete unless we look at the area of commercialization, or what we call monetization. So I have some slides on that. So that's ultimately the acid test of all IPs. Okay, now having said that, I think this year the World WIPO has put out the theme as IP and SMEs, and it says where they're going to shine the light on the critical role of small and medium-sized enterprises in the economy and how they can use intellectual property rights to build stronger and competitive, resilient businesses. I think our Prime Minister is also being saying the same thing. Germany is a very good example of a country where SMEs have converted IPs, converted innovations and ideas into IPs, and then converted them into world-class industries. Okay, so with that introduction, I'll just go over to my brief introduction, which has already been covered. I have corporate experience of about 30 years. So I've worked in various capacities. So I understand how industry looks at intellectual property. Then I've had the good fortune of being in IIT Madras, setting up their IP cell and interacting with faculty and researchers there, and then building up the IP cell all the way in, and connecting up to industry. Of course, now I do a lot of other things, which also give me other perspectives, which I would like to share during the course of this presentation. I think we have about 45 minutes. I'd like to check if we can keep the questions to the end. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and thanks for the questions that have been sent to me this morning. I'll try and cover them while I'm taking the presentation. And if there is something left over, then we can discuss it towards the end. Okay, my fundamental purpose is to give an essential familiarity to all who are participating on what is intellectual property and what are the different types of intellectual property. Because a lot of time when people talk about intellectual property, we think it's patents, but it's a lot more than that. And especially when you want to have a startup, or if you want to start a company, you need to have a good understanding of these and how they merge together, okay, and how they can be used to get value for your company. So that's how to recognize IP and potential value. Filing procedures, of course, that's important. A little look at the IP policy of the country and specifically some cues. I don't know if KCG College already has formulated its own IP policy. Okay, I've not seen it, so I'm presuming it may be there. If it is not there, I've put down some factors from my own experience, which you may wish to dovetail when you are finalizing or maybe changing your IP policy in due course. A quick look at IP law and the various resources that you can leverage for your ventures into IP. Okay, now here was a small newspaper article on October 15, 2015, which I used to tell a lot of students and faculty at IIT Madras, and I think it is true for any other institution. See, a lot of ideas come out from youngsters, a lot of ideas come out from research, and a lot of ideas come out when people are studying new things. Okay, and they may have great value. Here's a simple example where some improvement was done by one university in the power chips that go into mobile phones, and it was kept away in the shelf. And then later, when people took it, someone discovered that Apple was already using their invention and they were not aware of it. So finally, they brought Apple to book and laid a claim of $862 million. Okay, finally, I believe the courts in the US settled for about 350 or some odd $1 million, which went into the institute's fund. So you can imagine that if intellectual property could generate funds for universities and institutions like they do in the US, it could fuel a lot of research at the institution. Okay, so with that note, I'd like to now jump into the thing. So, you need to look at intellectual property in a holistic sense. It's a part of an innovation system, ecosystem, where you have innovations, which are ideas that are coming from people. Then there is a protection system that needs to be there. The protection system could be either in the form of non-disclosure agreements or secrecy undertakings, which are taken from people. But that would work if there are a limited number of people who have access to the information, or unlike in the case of institutions, we don't need to publish. But the thing is with all colleges is you need to also publish your work. So that's why this may not be a very useful strategy. The other end is you use the statutory laws that are available to seek protection for your intellectual property. Then of course there has to be a commercialization system. which the institute has to work out along with its other stakeholders. And the most important thing, finally, the enforcement system. I saw one question that came, and how do you handle multiple infringements? Okay, so here it's not the companies alone who can do. This is the government that has to provide the help and governmental institutions in ensuring that infringements don't take place. And where infringements take place, you have recourse to the law to either injunct, that is, prevent the person from going ahead and doing what he is doing, or if he has made gains on the basis of your innovation, seeking to get damages or a share of the profits that he has made. Okay, so with that introduction, here is some 4 sites, including the thing which I would implore all students, especially, of course, faculty may be already aware. That's of course the intellectual property site of India. In India, we have a separate section which deals with copyrights. So that's why there are 2 websites that you should look at. In the US, of course, it is there. Then World Intellectual Property Organization or the European Patent Office. And of course, the European Union for other IPs. So they have a different thing. So one interesting thing that I want to mention, if you see the USPTO site today, it does not show cars or it does not show something else which has been innovated recently. They show Muppets. They say how a person has done, taken patents for even Muppets. So the point here being made is that patents need not be all serious stuff. There could be a lot of things which are interesting, entertaining, which also you can file patents for and make fairly good commercial revenues. Okay, so with that, just brief look at what is intellectual property, a question that may arise. See, intellectual property is no different from any other property. Now, property has a wide meaning in law. It implies ownership. Okay, it also may mean a right or interest in that property. Say, for example, if you may rent out a property, rent out a flat. So similarly, you can lease or you can rent out your IP for someone to use. Okay, so a lot of things are there. So there are movable and immovable, tangible and intangible properties that are recognized in law. Intellectual property is a form of intangible property, and today it constitutes a huge value in the international business scenario. In fact, I had read once that almost more than 70 to 80% of the value of what industries produce today is actually in intellectual property. It's not in the buildings or it is not in the machinery. Okay, so in the case of intellectual property rights, we are looking at whether you give a right for someone to copy your invention, make a product using our invention, sell a product using our invention, import a product from abroad which incorporates your invention. You can even gift or inherit intellectual property. Okay, so that's giving an overview. So with that, I just want to pause for a minute or two to just check if I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yeah, and okay, if there's any unaddressed questions up to now, I could just field a question and then move on. Okay, here I have summarized the various intellectual properties that are today currently recognized in law. Okay, I'll elaborate on each one of them in the subsequent slides, but my focus a little later will be primarily on patents and copyrights, because these are the 2 which are majorly used in research institutes or colleges. But the others are also important, because I heard your principal mentioning that you'll have, and I also saw the video that you had shown, that you have filed a lot of patents and you have also received several grants, and there seems to be some sort of a startup ecosystem, and obviously some of the students are already taking their ideas and trying to convert them into startups and then take them into blockbusters. Okay, so it's important that they must have a holistic understanding of intellectual property and the interplay that takes place between the different types of intellectual property. Okay, I'll just go quickly into a brief introduction because I don't think we should if time will permit me to go into great detail on each one of them. A very important one, and probably the oldest rights, intellectual property rights, are copyrights, along with neighboring rights. Okay, it's been expanded in terms of its scope. Now, in the context of college, of course, students may be having musical compositions, or you may have an evening where some students may pelt out new songs. So in a college, also you must be aware that you can copyright some of these things. It's important. So it's not only the study part, but even in your recreational time, you may come up with various things which may have great value. I was told that there was somebody in Bombay who coined a 6-letter small sentence, and somehow the tune caught on, and when it was monetized, it went into lakhs of rupees. Okay, so that's important. So what's copyright? I'm already there. I won't read it out again. Computer software actually fits in within the definition of copyright. Okay, there is another concept of neighboring rights. It's when a copyrighted material you try to perform it. Suppose if you have written a dramatic piece and then someone performs it, there are performers' rights. Okay, suppose if you cut a disc out of the material, then that becomes recording rights. And suppose if you broadcast it on TV, or someone recites it on TV, that becomes broadcasting rights. So that's the whole concept. So in copyright, you're trying to prevent people from copying or reproducing what you have done. Okay, now having said that, I think there was one question someone asked me, what happens with e-contents? See, important point in copyright law is that the moment you've created the copyright, you already have the rights. The only thing is the reason why you need to register it, or you need to create evidence that you have created it at a point in time, is that when someone infringes it and it goes into a court of law, you need to produce evidence, and the evidence must have the time factor. So in fact, in the olden days, the practice was someone would just put down whatever they had, the material that they've created, put it in an envelope and send it by, say, a registered post to a friend of his, and the friend would then retain the envelope with the contents without opening it, so that tomorrow, if suppose someone infringes it, you take the envelope into court and produce it and say that, look, this was the work that I did on this date, which preludes anything that the other person has done. And that's how we explain. A friend of mine who's also in the IP field gave me a very simple idea. He said, whenever you do anything which you feel is copyright protectable, it's always good to put it on the mail, okay, zip it and mail it to yourself or a friend of yours, and just keep that mail carefully, because that's enough proof for you tomorrow that you have registered your thing. The reason why you registered another thing is to more like a barking dog. You prevent people from stepping in and trespassing into your domain. So if you register it, it gets published that you have registered it. So to that extent, people avoid coming and copying yours. Okay, so lifetime is about 60 years. Sorry, the copyright is valid for the lifetime of the person who has authored it, and for another 60 years after he passes away. Okay, the next one quickly. I think time. I think I'll move on faster. The next one is design. Unlike the word is a little deceptive. When we think of design, we think of engineering designs on our drawing boards. Designs is not there. This is something where you're protecting the aesthetics of something that a person has done as viewed by the eyes. Okay, so here I've given, it could be shape, configuration, pattern, or ornamentation. In fact, I've taken something down from the net showing how different types of pens are there, where the functionality is one and the same. Okay, so it's not an issue of patenting. It is the look and feel that you're trying to protect. So you're being creative there, and you don't want other people to either manufacture similar types of products, sell similar products, rent out or import similar products. The registration here for designs is also mandatory, and the rights that you get from registration are national. That means if you register in India, you have the rights only in India. If you register in, say, US, you have only the rights in USA. Okay, the period that you can get registration for a design is 10 years plus 5 years, that is a total of 15 years. That's the maximum registration that you can do. And after that, it goes into the public domain, anybody can use it. Okay, a good insight from the automotive industry. As you know, cars also sell because of their shape, because of their design, the looks and things of that sort. So automotive companies normally, they do a lot of before they get onto the functional aspects of the car, they actually quickly take design patents, what we call just design, design registrations to prevent others from copying. So that's aspect of design. The next one is patents, okay, which we will discuss in great detail. Patent is protecting the functionality of the product. Okay, this is a very important part. So it's basically the product itself, or it is the process that goes towards the manufactured product that you're trying to protect. And normally it has to stand up to 3 criteria. It must be novel in terms of the claim. It must have a utility in the common, day-to-day life, and it must be non-obvious. We will touch upon this a little later in greater detail. Okay, I just put guitars here. So a lot of people may be wondering why I put guitars here. So if you go back to the history of patents that have been filed in the many years, you'll find there's so many interesting examples of inventions that have been done. The US has had a 100-year history behind this. And in fact, US probably is the only country where innovation is as a part of their constitution. Okay, so again, patents, you only get national rights. So that means if you file a patent in India, you can only get all these rights of, say, use, sale, or manufacture in India. But you cannot stop somebody, say, from in South America from taking your patent and using it, or even in someone in Bangladesh from using it, unless you have gone and filed a patent in that country. The period normally that is given for patents is 20 years. There's a small exception that is made for pharma industries. I think they get 4 more years extra. Basically because pharma requires a lot of testing before the products are released into the market. Okay, we are seeing a lot of things being turned around the head during this COVID crisis. A lot of the pharma testing and all has been speeded up. A lot of the issues of IP are being talked about. Okay, the aspect of compulsory licensing, the aspects of removing the bars with respect to patent rights. It's interesting to read about them. Okay, the next one is important. It's called trade and service marks. These trade and service marks, in brief, if I may describe, the mark that you're using on the product is trying to connect the product to the source from where it is manufactured, the company that manufactures it. See, normally what happens, a lot of companies spend years to improve products and protect them. Okay, and so their quality, their reputation of the company is all actually summarized into that small emblem, and which you put on the product. Okay, so that's a trade and service mark. So that is what is linking the product to the manufacturer. So here the protection is in use. You have to use the trademark, because if you do not use the trademarks, then later the registries may not allow you to use them. Okay, again, trademarks, though you have to get a trademark by country, but there are concepts of transporter reputation and well-known marks. So you in the olden days, you could when imported goods were not easily available in India, a lot of people used to use trademarks of well-known brands in India and sell a lot of products. But today you cannot, because India is also a signatory to the World Trade Organization's TRIPS agreement. And so the well-known marks around the world are equally applicable in India. So normally trademarks and service marks can be taken ad infinitum. But of course, every 10 years, you need to renew them. So that's the background on trade and service marks. Then the other one is geographical indications. It is like trademark. The only difference between geographical indications and trademarks, in geographical indications, you are connecting the products that you're buying through the emblem that you use on the product to a specific geography where the product is known to be produced. So if you take the examples of Darjeeling tea, a long time back, people in Russia would take tea and put Darjeeling tea thing and use it. But today you cannot do those things. A lot of people sell Scotch whiskies, but you cannot do that now. They used to do it at one time because the words have certain connotations. So it is considered to be deceptive to the consumer if you use such terms. So geographical indicators basically protect materials that come for specific geographies. Here again, it's for 10 years. The rights go to certain geographical societies. So if you are creating some, say, Kanjivaram sarees, so there will be a Kanjivaram association will be there in that domain. who would be holding the geographical indication rights. You have to register with them, and then you can add it to the sarees that you sell. Okay, here again, it's a lifetime. It can be ad infinitum, but it's every 10 years you have to renew it. Okay, the last of them, okay, not so important for most people, is basically what has been found that after all this intellectual property thing has come into practice and all companies have started using it, they are finding that there's a lot of knowledge that has been accumulated over generations, especially in countries like India and some other ancient civilizations. And people were finding that a lot of the researchers were actually misusing access to these things and taking it and then making some small changes and putting it as patents or some other thing. Typical examples being the medicinal properties of turmeric or neem. India had to fight a lot of battles in US courts to protect these. So subsequent to that, now this regime has come in. There's an organization called Biodiversity Authority of India who actually manage this. They're making a list of all the ancient works that have been already done, whether it's cultural or medicinal, and trying to make a chronology of them so that they are protected. Now, it's important for institutions to know this, especially if you're in the biosciences, because in case you're doing some work or research in the area of biosciences and you're using some material that is basically derived from nature, then you cannot see, you can apply for a patent, but you won't get a patent grant unless you get a no objection certificate from the Biodiversity Authority of India. Okay, so that's the broad summary of the various IPs that are there. Of course, there are other aspects. There are domain names. They are again controlled by a different authority. Then there is a lot in terms of digital assets and the thing. Some of them, of course, come within the broad categories of copyright. But today, more specialized protections are also being sought by people. So with this, I'd like to stop for a short while and check if you're with me or if you need any clarifications on any point, maybe a minute or two.
Participants, if you have any specific questions, you can ask now.
Am I clear and audible, or should I go slower?
Yes, sir, audible.
Yeah. Okay. Now, having covered this, my next subject is patents and copyrights. Before we get on to patenting and discuss that in detail, a very important issue that comes up on campuses in India and research institutions is the aspect of patenting and copyright. Okay, especially in the context of softwares. So I just wanted to just quickly cover this. So the legal frameworks of patents are basically Indian Patent Act. Copyrights is the Copyright Act. Internationally, it is the PCT or the Paris Convention, and of course the Berne Convention. Okay, but there is a distinct difference and approach that the European Union follows and the US follows. In US has been very liberal for a long time. Of course, now they're slowly tightening up because of pressure from the rest of the world in terms of how much they allow softwares to be patented. Okay, so because you must remember the difference between the two of them, it's very important to catch on to this. So yeah, patent, you're protecting the functionality of your invention or something that new that you have done. Whereas in copyright, you're saying that, look, I have done this, it's my original piece. I'm preventing somebody from copying it. Now, there is an important distinction. Okay, I'll just cover the other points and then come back to a very important insight that it's good to keep in mind. Of course, the term of a patent is 20 years after filing. Okay, there's a concept of evergreening, but there's a lot of restrictions on that. Evergreening means people make very small tweaks to their invention and keep on patenting with every small tweak so that they keep it going. Pharma industries used to adopt this a lot, but a lot of pressure has come up on companies. The great example of this being the Novartis case. Okay, the another concept that is there in patenting is compulsory licensing. That means the government, if it feels that you're not able to get adequate quantities into the country, then they can ensure that they give compulsory licenses to people. In the current COVID situation with all these vaccinations, this subject has been discussed, but then countries desist from doing it because of international pressure. Okay, in the case of copyright, of course, it is 50 years over and above the lifetime of the person. But in the case of copyright, this does not matter, because by and large, the shelf life of most copyright products are not more than 3 to 5 years. Okay, if you are lucky. So to that extent, copyright does not give great protection to a large extent. Okay, so now the other points are there, but what I wanted to emphasize is, see, in a patent, if suppose I am working on some area and somebody else is also working on the area in the US. Okay, now suppose if I patent something today, the other person, even if he has done the same work, 1 minute after I have submitted my patent, if he submits his patent would not be granted. It will be my patent would be granted because I have done it a little earlier in time. Okay, so I get the protection. But this same thing does not exactly apply in the case of copyrights. Suppose I'm writing out a code in India and somebody also is writing the code in the US. Okay, and if both of them have no connection with each other and both of them finish completing the code and take copyrights, both will have the rights. The time factor does not apply in the case of copyright. As long, the only thing is in copyright is you're preventing the other person from copying. So if you claim that the other person has copied your code, then you have to establish that he had access to yours, he saw what you had done, and from there he had copied it. So that is the essential difference. Okay, so broadly, I think many of you may be already aware, but I just want to tell you where the offices are for patents. Of course, it's right in Chennai, and of course in the other cities. For designs, it is in Kolkata. Trademarks, again, it's there in all the major commercial cities. GI registry is again in Chennai. The copyrights office is in Delhi. The biodiversity authority also is in Delhi, but I think they have an office in Chennai. Okay, so this is broadly the administrative offices. I've already shared with you the websites. So there's a lot of useful information which you could, whenever you have time, I would invite you all to go there because you get a lot of information. Okay, so I now stop with that. So that was a general introduction to the area of intellectual property. So now I'll dive straight into patenting and touch upon various aspects of patenting. I could again stop for a minute if there's anybody who needs any clarification. Okay, so I'll move on. This was one slogan I used to use in IIT Madras before publishing: protect your IPs, whether it's patents or copyrights. Because a lot of people earlier had a general idea that normally patenting means it takes a long time. It takes almost month and a half by the time I go through the whole process. So, people used to hesitate to go and do patenting, and many a time people have gone and published their articles, or they have gone and gone to press, or they have spoken to other colleagues somewhere, and in the process what has happened is they've lost a valuable opportunity to protect it. So I wanted to just mention that it's possible to actually do a provisional filing of a patent within 2 to 3 days, if not even less. Okay, if you're taking, of course, if you're a first time patent filer, then you may need somebody's support and help. Of course, if the institution has already developed the knowledge, the core expertise on filing of patents, then you can go to the right person and speak to him and then take it forward. But otherwise, if you use a patent agent, you would take anywhere between 7 days to about a month. Okay. Okay, I'm going through some things which, okay, some of you all must be already familiar with. But this is, I don't know if you might be having a lot of students also who are being introduced to the subject for the first time. Okay, what you can patent. Okay, now what happens now, only a lot of persons when they're trying to patent, they look at only one aspect and go ahead with the patenting. It's worthwhile to check whatever research work that you have done or the publication that you have done, to dive a little deeper into it to see what are the aspects that you could patent. So here, like, for example, there's an example that I took from the net. It could be the lock per se, or the composition of the chemicals that are used as lubricants, or the apparatus that you use for manufacturing, or the process that you used, or the sequence of steps that you use for manufacturing, say, a door lock. Okay, I just took this as an example, but to say that when you look at a patient, dive into it, see what are the elements that are there, which could be, and then keeping in mind what do you think is today available in the market, what do you think a person outside in the market would value, and then pick up those things and try and see if you can patent them. Okay, or at least if you cannot put multiple patents, you put a patent but put all of them into the claims. Okay, here again, one more advice I have to give people is that when you publish an article in for say a scientific journal, you need to be up to the point. Okay, so whatever you have done work up to that particular date, or whatever results that you have got, whatever data that you have compiled, you need to only put that out in the journal. You cannot put anything more into the journal. Okay, but whereas when you are doing patents, see, it's a different thing. Your material that you put as a patent is going to come out into the public domain some 18 months later. Okay, because that's a statutory thing. Otherwise, it is kept in wraps. The second thing is technology moves on. Third is that you may have predicted where your technology is likely to go, but you have not had the time or resources to complete all your work. So when you write a patent draft, try and be expansive. Okay, try and see the claims that you're likely to complete your work on in the next 18 months. Build it all into your patent document. Okay, there's nothing wrong in it. There are companies which do that. They continuously put in patents even without the work being done, because they know that they're going to do the work in anticipation and start putting it down. So to basically preempt somebody else from beating them in the game of patenting. Okay, so the important point is that if you're filing a patent, write your document expansively. Okay, even if test results are not there, but the test results are expected, you write it down. Of course, I'm not saying that you should claim something which is not there, because then it may be thrown out at the time of examination. Okay, again, here this is something which many of you may be already aware of, but I just cover patentability. Whether you are doing your own due diligence, or whether the due diligence is being done by the patent officer after you file your patent, it takes 5 aspects into consideration. The first and most important aspect is, of course, it should be patentable, because there is a section in the IP Patent Act which prevents patenting of certain items which are used, which have, say, defense applications, or which are required for national interest to protect, or whether it is something to do with the living sciences, then those are not allowed. Okay, so that you have to be careful. So, okay, sometimes people get around this by the way you write your patents. Okay, second thing is, okay, so there is an interesting example. Okay, I'm not going to get into the total narration, but suppose you clone a mouse. The important question is, can you patent it? Okay, I'd like to just throw this question to the audience. If you clone a mouse, do you think you can patent it? Okay, yes and no. Indian law prohibits it. A lot of the European patent laws also prohibit, but the US law allows it, because it says that anything that is a creation of man can be patented. Okay, so sometimes you need to understand the case laws, how the courts have interpreted the law, and different countries may have different yardsticks for what is allowed under item A. Second one is the aspect of industrial applicability. I said utility. That means whatever you're patenting must have some application in society. If you do something which has no application in society, then it will be rejected, because at the end of the day, they see the patenting process as something which will have utility for the normal person out in society. Okay, the next 3 are important points. One is novelty and inventive step. Okay, this distinction is very important. A lot of people get confused with this because normally when you write a patent, you're supposed to put into the patent draft document the claims that you are making. Okay, now let's take an example. If suppose you create a new material tomorrow, which is, say, wear resistant. Okay, so obviously as in the labs or in that particular trade, there'll be various traits of the product which are there. Say maybe hardness values, okay, the friction coefficients. I'm just using very layman's terms, but there must be a lot more of important aspects, or the way the material is processed, the temperatures that it is processed. So all these have to be put down in the claims when you write out your patent. So novelty checks whether any one of these claims that you're making is not there already in the 70 million odd patents that are already there around the globe. Okay, so each claim is checked out to see if it is novel with respect to the other. Okay, so suppose you take a pen. Okay, a pen is a pen. Okay, now I take a pen and I have here a pen which you can probably see is got white on the top and gray in the bottom. Okay, now suppose tomorrow someone changes the shape of the pen to some extent and uses a different type of thing for getting the lid out. Okay, so that's a novelty. But then, can I patent it or not? It comes into the next step, which is inventive step. So what they say in patenting is that novelty is not enough. You may tomorrow just change the color of it, or you may say A and plus B makes C, or B plus A also makes C. So these two are both novel from each other because of the way you're doing it. But the C, the end results is the same. So in inventive step, what they check is that if another person in the same field as you, if that same person looks at it, invention, what is his reaction? Is his reaction saying, oh, wow, this is a great invention? Then it probably will qualify as an inventive step. But suppose he says, no, 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 this is just an extrapolation. The person has just applied instead of A plus B is not B plus A. It's not a great invention. Then it would not pass this. Okay, I've given you a very simple example, but of course, in the patent office, they have to look at it. There are obviously patent officers have to write down their reasons why they are striking down any claim of yours. And of course, the last aspect is that whatever you are claiming as a patent, you have to write out a detailed description. And the description that you write out should be detailed enough so that anybody else who does not have access to you, who has not met you before, just by reading your document, should be able to replicate the process or the product and get the same results. Okay, so that's why we say the basically assessment has to go through these 5 steps. This is what they apply in the patent offices, whether in India or anywhere around the world. Okay, what is not patentable? You have a lot of examples. I just made a list of them, but I just want to harp on 2-3 things which keeps coming up, because I know that in a lot of our institutions, people use, okay, one of them is people come up with new business methods, or people write a lot of algorithms and then they code it. Okay, and then the question comes up, can I patent this? Okay, I've written out an algorithm for doing this and this. Can I patent it? Say, for example, this is a big issue. Of course, it is easier to get patents in the US for these things. So a lot of people want to file patents directly in the US when they have algorithms involved, because they feel that it will be easier to get a grant in the US than in India. But then, of course, the cost considerations have to be considered. So algorithms is one area that you have to be careful about. Then I gave you the example of, say, living systems that you create. If you create a living being, an animal or something through cloning, or if you create a new plant variety. See, some countries allow you to patent them, some other countries do not allow you, or they have other regimes. So the details will have to be looked at in specific context. Okay, another thing is, suppose you have a particular chemical or something like that, which you could use for one purpose. Let's take an example, say talcum powder. Can we use, say, on a carom board for playing caroms? Okay, you could patent that. Okay, but suppose you use the same powder and say, look, it can also be used for applying on your hand when you have, say, bowling. Now the question is, can that be patented? Of course, they will say no, because it's a different use of the same substance. Okay, I just gave you some very mundane examples to quickly strike the point, but that's the important thing. Okay, then treatment methods and therapy for disease are again not allowed. Some of these are written down into the statutes, but some of them have come up from various case laws that courts have determined. Okay, I'll take you quickly through the patenting process that is followed in here. It's basically 3 stages you must remember. There's one stage which is the filing part, which takes place in the institution. which starts with the assessment of patenting. And here I would suggest to people that a lot of assessments of patenting people do just before they start filing the patent. Okay, that's not the best time to start. The best time to start looking at patentability assessment is right from the time when you start your research work. Okay, it's always good that the patenting thought process goes on in parallel along with the research process or along with the ideation process. And of course, you do the final due diligence before you file patent. So that's patentability assessment. Then you can either do a filing provision if there's urgency or priority date fixing, and then a complete filing. The next phase, what they call prosecution. Okay, that is where your patent gets published. Okay, I think I'm going a little behind on time, so should I speed up? Then there's an examination that is done by the patent officers in the patent office, and that goes through a process, and then finally the granting of patent. And then once you get a granting of patent, renewals have to take place. If you don't renew them in time, the penalties are very stiff. And the second thing is, of course, the pricing of renewals also increases in the years as you go forward. There's a concept of early publication, a request for examination. I'll just mention it here and move on. Okay, this is a detailed chart that's available. It's accessible for you. Any one of you visit the USPTO site, you will find this. Okay, from my experience that I had, these are the recommendations that I have made to the inventors in IIT Madras, which I just want to quickly share with you. I would always suggest that if you're in India, always first file in India. Don't examine going straight away into any country. It's very expensive. Okay, unless, as I was mentioning, if you have a very strong algorithm that you've written down and you feel there's great international potential, and you feel that if you put it in the Indian system, it may take time and you may not get a grant, then you may choose to go directly into the US without filing it in India. But otherwise, it's better to just go through a provisional route. Okay, again, here you would examine the area of research or the work that you're doing. If it's, say, suppose in IT or in software, a lot of technology is getting done continuously and very fast. So in such cases, I would recommend that you should do provisional filing as early as you can. Do it yourself if required. But of course, write your patent document in as much detail as you can so that you don't lose out any of the claims. Okay, it can be done in 1 or 2 days. Slowly over a period of time, the institution would have developed the people in the system who have reasonable expertise and who can be touched upon to help you. Okay, it's better to file quickly a provisional filing. So if it's, say, if you're doing something on artificial intelligence or machine learning, it's better to do it fast because somebody else may otherwise nip you in the race. But of course, if it is in the areas of, say, oceanography or some of the other engineering sciences which are a little slower and take a lot more of time in terms of validation, you can go through you can do a complete filing after you finish all your work, which may take you up to a month. Okay, and international filing, of course, a lot of people feel that their inventions are very good and they have an international potential. There are various routes which I have detailed out in the next chart for your brief understanding. Okay, so as I said, file in India. Don't choose straight away to go to the country that you want to unless you have very strong reasons for it. But otherwise, it is better to file a PCT, because once you file a PCT, see, once you file in India for 12 months, any case, nobody can copy the idea anywhere in the world. It's only after 12 months that they can copy. Otherwise, you can, in any case, bring action against them. But then once you file a PCT, Patent Cooperation Treaty, which today you can do even through the Indian office at much lower costs. If you do a PCT filing, then you can extend this time period of international protection by another 18 months, giving you almost 30 months time to look at the idea, look at the market potential, look at if you can get partners who can support you with funding or grants to go forward. Okay, and then consider which countries your markets lie in, and then go into those countries. Okay, so after PCT, and another advantage of PCT is you get an international opinion. Normally, a PCT assessment is much more stringent than an assessment that is done by your direct Indian patent offices. So then after you've done a PCT, when the time comes, you have to file directly in the countries that you choose. You have to choose which countries you want to file. Each country has a cost associated with it, and you have to do that. Of course, some countries you can even go region-wise. Like for example, Europe, you can file for, say, for a European patent, and then choose the designated countries into which you would like to extend your rights. Okay, so this is broadly on international filing. Okay, one last point on patenting. You must remember that a lot of people, after you get your grant, they forget that you have to send out every year a document called a Form 27. This is applicable in India. There may be similar regimes in other countries also, to show that the granted patent is being applied, or at least you're trying to apply it in actual day-to-day use, because they don't want people to hoard patents and just for recognition purposes. It must have utility. So if you don't file this Form 27, you always run the risk that the grant may be withdrawn. Okay, so that's with respect to patents. I could just stop for a minute before I move on. Okay, there's one more thing that I want to say. You'll also, I understand that you have an innovation officer. I must congratulate you all for that. And you'll have also doubled your patents filing in the last 3 years. So obviously there is a lot of communication that is going on and on the thing. So basically, as you start maturing, you'll find that these are the various sections that will be necessary. There's a pre-filing section where you do communications. Then you must also see what fields of research and what white spaces are available for people to research on or come up with bright ideas. Okay, that's one aspect of it which needs a lot of focus, and you'll find that a lot of work needs to be done there if you want to improve the portfolio of your inventions. Of course, the next part is the filing aspects. As I told you, there could be provisional filing followed by complete filing. Then you may want to go to specific countries for filing. So somebody has to manage these processes. Somebody has to keep track, because these are all time bound. If you don't do it on time, then you lose the opportunity. So there's a section that somebody must keep focus on this, and you must have a good computerized system, because as the number of your patents increase, you'll find it difficult to manage the data. So either you buy, I'm not sure about too many ready-made solutions available. In IIT, we had actually developed our own system and improved on it over a period of time. You could probably meet somebody in case you want to get some inputs on this. The next part is that the patents have to be published. Okay, they have to be brought into the common domain. So only then will people know what you have filed. Because when you file a patent, nobody knows what you have filed. Okay, because it is in the patent office in a locker. Okay, unless you have paid extra fees and asked for early publication. Usually people don't ask for it unless an invention has great potential and you want the world to know about it quickly. Then you may wish to pay the fees and get early publication. Another problem is in the patent office, many times they're also slow. They don't publish in time. The reason why you should publish your things quickly, get a patent office to publish, and you must monitor this through a system, is because only when you publish it will search engines that are used by various industries or various other academic institutions will be able to pick it up and become aware that you have done certain work in a certain area. So the publication and the exam has to be tracked. Similarly, you have to track the examination requests. Okay, because patent office suddenly will send you, they examine your claims, they look at the novelty aspects, then they put it out to see if there are any people who are having objections. And if objections come out, then the patent office may send you a first examination report and ask you to respond back on how you're going to defend your claim. So sometimes these get lost in postal delays, or they get addressed to the wrong people, because this process takes about 4 to 5 or 6 years. And you may have changed address, or as a student, you may have left the institution and gone up, taken up a job somewhere else. So the institution must have some mechanism to track this. And of course, the next one is grants. Once you get granted patents, you have to keep them carefully, because one grant could sometimes become $1 billion idea. And at that time, you may not find your grant certificate, okay, which gives you the right. So it's important that these certificates are institutionally protected and preserved. So that's important. And last part is, of course, maintenance. You have to decide how much you want to keep on spending if the idea doesn't get converted into a marketable idea. Okay, so that's broadly the thing. Okay, some sharing. I presume you must be having an invention disclosure form, which is available to everybody. So anybody who has an invention, or if he comes up with an idea which can be copyrighted, or something he wants to be trademark registered on behalf of through the institute, he must have a form which has to be filled up. Okay, broadly these type of informations must be available. Only one important point I want to mention here: there's a difference between an inventor and an applicant. See, many times the work that you may do may not be only sitting in your institution. another inventor from some other institution or from a governmental institution or from a client who's come to get some research done in an institution may also want his name to be attached. So then you're having multiple applicants in the invention. You may have multiple inventors and multiple inventions, which create issues later unless they are carefully put down into agreements. Okay, so these are some of the things that you may need. The next important point is search. I'm sure you must be having search engines, or you may have some licensed applications. Of course, there are a lot of publicly available, even Google patents you can use, but it requires a lot of skills. Of course, some of the value-added products are also there. The advantage of that is they summarize, they give you means of visualizing information or getting summaries or get some other value-added requirements. Something which may help you find out who are the other manufacturers, who are the other people who are patenting the same thing, and whom can you look at for collaboration. So those things come when you look at something. Okay, here I've just made a list of the various techno-commercial due diligence resources. In the common domain, they're already there, which is the top part. The bottom part is some of the other commercially available search engines. In IIT, we had used Thomson Innovation at point in time. We continue to do that. We also were using Orbit Express. There are a lot of powerful analytical tools. Of course, these guys charge a lot. But if the patenting activity increases, you may find sometimes these are very useful in improving the productivity at the filing stage and also at the marketing stage. Okay, I want to just stop for a minute here before I go to the other parts of the thing. Any questions?
So we have 3 questions posted in chat section.
Okay. You want me to address it now or at the end?
It's up to you, sir. If you want to address it now, we can.
Okay, just one second. Let me see if I can open the chat section.
Or you want me to read the question, sir?
Yeah, if you can read out the question.
There's a question from Karthikeyan. Is there any protection on plant varieties?
Yeah, there is a plant variety. If you, I'll come to the legal. I'll share the acts at the end. It's called Protection of Plant Varieties and Breeders' Rights. There's a separate regime for that. Okay, and the office is based in Delhi. Basically, it's making sure the farmers have their rights protected, and at the same time, breeders who develop new plant varieties, they also get certain rights. Okay, there's a very detailed mechanism. There's a separate schema. It does not come under the aspect of patents. It's a separate thing. Okay, I think with that I'll stop because it is a big, huge area. It may consume a lot of time. Because I have some more slides which I want to share with you. Can I take the next question?
Yes, sir. So this question is from Dr. Banureka. So I have synthesized nanoparticles of herbal raw materials and have applied on the textile materials to make them as a bandages. So can I patent the procedure of making the product?
You can patent you can patent it. It's a process. You can patent it. But since you use some herbal materials, okay, if that is an important constituent of invention, all that you do, you have to mention it, and from the Biodiversity Authority of India, you may need to get an NOC, and with an NOC will have to be added to your patent at the appropriate time, because otherwise at the time of grant, it may get held up, and they may ask you to go in and get me an NOC because you're using herbal materials. Next question.
So this question is from Balaji Venkatraman. Can I take a protection of any digital work I'm doing? So if so, under which law it will come?
The digital protection can only be done through copyrights. That's the only thing that you have. But the thing is, if you want to go beyond that, then you may need to use other means of protection like trademarks and other things. But that will have to become a part of your intellectual property strategy. Okay, so if you're actually taking digital assets and if you're setting up a startup tomorrow, you must have an intellectual property strategy. I have a slide to explain this a little later. Maybe I'll touch upon that again when I come to that. Okay, I'll move on. I don't know how I'm doing for time. How much time do I have?
We have planned it for between 5 and 6, sir. I think we can go ahead with another 15 minutes of time.
Okay, fine. Okay, so coming to marketing, I'll just share some insights. This is a summary chart which says, see, you will have intellectual property which you have registered, and you have some intellectual property which you cannot register. Okay, but only thing you must remember that a patent on its own may not sell in the market. Okay, very rarely it happens. So normally it is portfolios of inventions that actually get picked up in the market. Okay, so what has to happen is that somebody in your system will have to look at the patents that are being granted, or the patents that have been applied, and see into what portfolios they're fitting. So there could be some patents that you are doing in the areas of clean tech. Okay, some may be in the area of automotive. Some could be in the area of, say, biotechnology. So you have to put them together, and within those also there could be sub streams. So you have to portfolio them. Second is that somebody must also watch around what other institutions are doing in India and abroad, okay, or even industries, and see if the invention that you are doing can be portfolioed with somebody else, and whether you could collaborate with that other person and see whether jointly you could go to marketing that set of inventions. Okay, the next one, I just put down some channels. Of course, digital marketing, you must try and make sure that your inventions are published quickly so that they're available on search engines, or you could have your own institute website where you can put these out and display, or you could go to some public platforms which are available for a price would be willing to put your inventions as part of their portfolios and approach their customers. The second one, of course, is directly to customers. You could write to them if you know of somebody closely, or you have alumni. Try and connect up to your alumni and see if they can give you windows into industries. The next one is, of course, intermediaries. There are a lot of people who are brokers, like people get flats on rent. So similarly, even in IP space, there are. Unfortunately, in India, this is still not developed very much. It is, of course, in the US, there are very strong aggregators who get them together. One of the people I know who we had used for some time is Intellectual Ventures. So that there are other people also. If you do a search, you'll get them. So through intermediaries, you can go, but then they have various pricing models. Some people want you to give some money up front, and then on a case by case basis, they charge you. And these tend to be stiff because they are in dollars. So some point the institute will have to take a call on how to go about it. Next one, of course, is you partner with others. And of course, last one is the most and ideal way is if the very same people who have invented, or the very same people who have researched an idea, take it up. Take the help of the institutes in incubators and set up startups, and then try and monetize it little later. Okay, this is a chart that I wanted to describe because this is trying to also address the question that somebody had. On the top, I borrowed a chart from the net, but I've adapted it to our discussion today. See, this is a typical chart which shows how much money that you have to spend as the technology goes to maturity. So at the end R&D stage, you're at zero, but then you have to spend a lot of time, money in the R&D space and also in the prototype development. Okay, and once after that, you have to create some sort of a pilot before you can get any industry partner or even an external person to get interested in an idea. Because otherwise, a lot of people say that, okay, fine, you've done an invention, but how do I know that it will work? Okay, they want to see some proof of concept. So those things all take a lot of money. And that's why a lot of inventions drop off after the pilot stage and don't go into commercial success. There's a word that they coin, if you see in Google, it's called valley of death. There's a lot of innovations and ideas get lost there. They don't actually see finally commercial success. Because you need to attract someone at the right time, then to pull you up and take you into the commercials side. Okay, so that's it. And so an important point is that no one single IP may work when you go through this whole journey. Okay, when you are at the R&D stage, you may need to be secretive. So if a people of say 3-4 people are working together, in the initial stages, you may need to have a non-disclosure agreement so that the 4 or 5 people who are working on that do not share this information with anybody else. Say, suppose if somebody comes from industry for a sponsored research to the institution, then you may need to make sure that the students concerned who are going to work on the research also bind themselves down with the institute for a confidentiality agreement that they don't openly share this information with the others. But then you come up with an issue that if you're not 18 years old, then you cannot sign agreements because you're a minor. Okay, so the institute will have to have a policy of how to handle this. But then as you go into maturity, you may have to protect it through copyrights or designs, or a little later into patents. And then finally, ultimately, your best protection is in trademarks, because patents also run their life in 20 years. Okay, so after that, you cannot protect the idea. Designs can be copied because someone can work around. Copyrights are the easiest to copy because the person, if he doesn't have access to you, he can write an independent code if he knows what is the final end result. Okay, so trademark then becomes the important thing if you're in the commercial world in industry. Okay, so with that, I just like to summarize precautions for you all, specifically in the context of institutions. The points that I would want to search at the start and during research. Okay, always use this whole aspect of search and due diligence as a concurrent process. Don't do it just before you want to patent. Before publishing any disclosure, always must have some sort of a review mechanism in the system to check whether the idea is worth protecting as an IP before you release it for publishing. Okay, other point that I say is do not file directly abroad because it's very expensive unless you have very strong justification for it. Do it first in India and then test the market and then take it forward. Okay, check for secrecy provisions. This is very important because otherwise you make mistakes. And timing is important for some areas like in electronics, machine learning, artificial intelligence. Yeah, timing is very important. Okay, so if you want to get a grant of a patent or you want someone to be interested in a thing, do it fast. Don't take time over it. So institute professionals must have a differentiating process. So depending on the type of invention, it may allow a strategy 1 or strategy 2 as a part of the policy. Okay, with that now I want to come into the domain of policy. There is a national IPR policy. India has been a little bit behind Europe and US and a lot of other countries in terms of the intellectual property space. We were all only copying what the US and the Europeans were doing. But I think in 2016, an initiative was taken to come out with a national IPR policy. I won't read it out to you. It's there in the domain. But the whole idea of this is to give an impetus to intellectual property because India felt that if you really want to grow fast, okay, the fast growth comes from MSMEs, okay, small industries, not the big industries, because bigger industries take a long time to grow. And big industries will normally be collaborations with international companies or international companies coming and setting up shop in India. And normally they control their IPs very strongly. So if you want really homegrown IPs, then it has to be from the institutions to the small industries and the thing. So that's what has been encapsulated here. So both in terms of vision statement and a mission statement. And of course, there are objectives that have been also stipulated. Everybody should go through them. I think these objectives also have been the NIFR or the Atal Innovation Awards. All these things have actually tried to bring in a lot of these objectives into the measures to basically encourage institutions to spread awareness of IPR. And I must congratulate you all and also thank you all for inviting me to share my thoughts on the subject today. So that's a part of the IPR awareness outreach and promotion. Generation of IPRs, I think all these NIFR and the parameters have been built into the ranking systems to encourage institutions to give a lot of impetus to IPR generation because future industry growth is also going to depend on IPR growth. Legal and legislative framework, I'm going to share with you what's there in India. Administration and management at the national level, at the institutional level, it is important. Of course, commercialization of IPR is a very important area that needs a lot of development work that has to be done. And a lot of networks have to be developed, a lot of ecosystems have to evolve. So a lot of networking is necessary. Enforcement and adjudication, of course, this is an area of, I think one question was asked, what happens if multiple people infringe my invention? What do I do? Okay, so what you do is, first is you go to the intellectual property office and see if that guy already has a registration already done for his IP. Then you have to check whether that registration, your registration are at the same time, whether the scope of those registrations are the same. If the scope of the registration are the same, then you will first have to try and get that registration or that patent nullified. Okay, then there you can take the help of the IP offices. Of course, if suppose the person does not have IP protection and he's just copying your thing, then you have to go to the courts. Okay, in the courts, you have remedies of what are called injunctions. You can request the help of the courts to, of course, if there's a due process for that, to injunct that person, or that is prevent the person from continuing what he is doing. Okay, it's like an order from the court to the person to stop him from continuing to do what he is doing. Or otherwise, you can also go to the court and say that he has made undue or unholy profits from copying your invention. So he has to give whatever profits he has made to you. Or you may say that because he has copied your invention, you have lost out. Okay, there have been damages that you have incurred, so you want him to compensate for those damages. These are the three routes that you would normally take. Of course, in some cases, you can even take the help of the police to inspect where you suspect the copying is going on and stop that. And if suppose imported goods are coming with your patent being copied by somebody else, suppose somebody in Pakistan starts copying your patent and starts supplying goods in India and smuggling them, you can even go to the import authorities and requisition their help to stop that. And then the last objective is human capital development, which you all are doing. I think a lot of things do not happen because of one person's effort. Of course, individuals are important, but even the system is important and the institutions are important. So that's where the work has to be done. Okay, the last chart has just summarized this generating. And so if you see the sum and essence of the policy and the objectives is that generating and commercializing IP is a key national priority. Prime Minister will be talking about 3 trillion economy. All that is not going to happen unless each one of our institutions encourages their students to bring up new startups, come up with new ideas, come up with billion-dollar ideas. Okay, so that's important. So the important point here is saying that a lot of the work that you're doing in the institutions, everything is intellectual property. The software codes that you write, okay, even what you do during entertainment may also be a subject matter of IP. The work that research that you do is a subject matter of IP. So you have to remember that. So you have to remember that sponsoring agencies may be looking at it, industries may be looking at it, other institutions may be looking at it. So you have to look at scope for collaboration, also look at threats of competition. Okay, another point that you also must remember that sometimes in the research you may be using ideas of somebody else, some already work that has been done with somebody else, which has become a component of your research. Okay, so when you go into the market, you have to be careful because at that stage you don't want your research to get stuck because somebody else has done some research and patented it, and those patents are already there bundled into the material that you're using. Here, I'd like to share one example of some research that was done in chemistry by somebody who created a new pharmaceutical compound, and he went to industry, and the industry found it very attractive. But when they started delving backwards and did some reverse engineering, they found that that particular invention was using a material which was already patented. And if they wanted to capitalize and get the benefit from the final product, they could only do that if they went back to the material supplier and got into a negotiation with them. So this is how the invention got stuck in commercialization, because at the time of research, somebody had not done the due diligence to check what materials they were using and to check whether those materials already were patent protected or secrecy protected. So that due diligence is important. So here I would end with saying capture your potential value of your IP, but take care when you're using others' IPs also. It's important because we are in an interconnected world today. A lot of the work that you're doing is on the shoulders of other people's work. So it's important to be a thing. I'm sure your institute may be having a policy or may have developed a policy or maybe in the process. So before you, I would like you to just consider some points. First, it's always important to do an audit of the institute's processes, because you have to see where the IP is getting generated, what are the sources of IP that are there, and then decide which ones are important and priority for the institution tomorrow. Some you may want to do it, take it up later. Then you have to also decide in your policy, where will the ownership of this IP reside? Will it be with the inventors, or will it be with the institution, or will it be some sort of a joint arrangement? Then next one is, if you're doing work for somebody else or if you're collaborating with somebody else, how will the co-applicants be treated? In what proportions they will be treated? Who will bear the costs of, say, registering or protecting, and who will bear the costs of prosecution, and in what ratios it will be applied? And then, of course, if suppose tomorrow you monetize it, how will the monetary benefits be shared? Many of these things have to be thought through and put into agreements early. because when the benefits come, then it becomes very difficult to agree. So agreement is best done early in the day. As they say, a stitch in time saves 9. So this is what we have also realized, and I'd like to share that. Okay, the next one, of course, as you keep filing patents every year, you will decide whether you want to expend that material money that year itself, or you want to treat it as a capital of the institute, something like an asset that is being built in the institute, which you may amortize over a period of time. So all these are various constituents of an institute policy you may wish to consider. Okay, now I think this is the last part. I will go a little faster. In IP law, I just want to, because this is a very vast subject. Some of you, if you are interested, even while you are studying in college, you could do this 1-year diploma for the National Law School on intellectual property. It's a very intensive program. It can be done on correspondence. Of course, I think Anna University also offers some of these courses. So you could look at these because they will build you up. Because as technologists, it's very important in today's world to be IP savvy. Okay, because willy-nilly, somewhere or the other, you will find that this becomes a very useful knowledge that you could have. So there are international instruments, and because IP is an area which is globally has global impact. So it's just not enough to know what's happening in the country. It also need to have an international perspective. So there are various international instruments because IP law has been evolving over the last 300 years. Okay, and then of course there are national laws. National laws, of course, there are statutory provisions. There are normal thing, as you suppose if you want to defend your invention, then you have to go to the normal courts. And then there's a lot of case law. That is how courts have determined how to deal with various types of IPs in various countries. So that's important also. Okay, international regime, as I was saying, it has evolved over almost 300 years. So here actually on a time chart, I've shown various things that have happened. So you'll find a lot of them are basically conventions that countries may have come together and decided that they will mutually give protection to certain classes of IP. So there's a concept of Berne Convention 1986 for copyrights. Okay, there's a Madrid Agreement for trademarks. Okay, there's a patent, of course, there's also a Paris Convention for patents, which are also again upgraded through the PCT TRIPS agreement in 1970. Okay, let me not crowd you out. This is just to give you an understanding that IP has an international perspective. So all researchers and people as you go forward must be aware of this. Okay, now coming to the Indian thing. Okay, I think I also have the specific answer for a person who asked what happens to plant varieties, so what I protect. So basically, for each of these IPs, there are the acts that I've listed out here. If you go to the website, also you can find them. But okay, you don't need to struggle with these. A lot of it you can find by Googling. But you may need to read the specific acts because they keep changing. And then, of course, there are rules. Rules are very important because that's where all the forms are given, the timelines are given, because those normally are not mentioned in the acts. So how much time you have, okay, what is patentable, what is not patentable, in greater detail that is there. So you must be aware of these rules. So I'd like to stop here by just leaving you with this, saying your research and your ideas are valuable. Learn to protect them, and learning of the protection and how to protect it. Okay, of course, institutional support will be there to help you. But more importantly, if you are aware, it also helps greatly. So I'd like to stop with this, but of course, just one small thing, another thing which was there in the news item is a gentleman who actually passed out 1969 from IIT Madras. Actually, this I had shared to encourage IIT Madras students, but is equally applicable to anybody. This gentleman in 69, he used to work in GE, in the R&D department of GE, and he had a lot of patents and ideas that he had, a lot of publications and a lot of patents that he had filed. But you know, the important point that I wanted to do, unless you share the grants with the outside world, it's very difficult to get market value and commercialization. So just why I took up this example is, this guy used to do a lot of work, but he restricted himself to the lab. Okay, but one day a marketing person came to visit to the lab to see what work was going on. And while he was going around the lab, he noticed something, that this guy was doing some work on improving the switches, miniaturization of switches, which could then be used into LED bulbs. Okay, and the marketing guy suddenly understood the need for fuel efficiency and energy efficiency in lighting. So it immediately struck him as something which will would be an interesting possibility to market. So he immediately went off to the chairman of the company, who happened to be Jack Welch at that point in time, and he explained to him this whole idea. And Jack Welch, who was chairman of the company, immediately understood the potential of this whole thing, and he rushed immediately with him to the lab to see what was the work that the gentleman was doing. And then once he was convinced, immediately he became convinced, and he put in millions of dollars behind this person to see that the particular invention that he had done was perfected quickly and in rapid time. And then they took out this product into the market, and we have LED bulbs. And I believe his invention, as you can read here, of course, it's not very clear because I had to just scan the image from the newspaper. But his invention has found great use, and in fact, he was given the medal, a National Medal of Technology Innovation in 2011. And in fact, he was also given for energy conservation an award. Okay, so with that, I'd like to stop and field any further questions that you have, time permitting. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm all yours.
Thank you, sir. That was really an enthralling session and very informative. So now I would request the participants, if there is any questions, you can post it in the chat section so that that will be read and it will be clarified.
If you don't mind, I'm not able to open the chat section because the presentation is open. You could just read out. I think someone there can just sort the questions out and just read it out, and I could respond to that.
Already we had 3 questions, sir, and that was answered. So if there are any other questions, if they post, I'll just read it.
Okay. Just one second. There are 6 questions, I think. Am I right?
It's 3, sir. And there is one feedback form also posted.
Can I take a production of any digital one that was there? Then the feedback form, something you have said.
Yes, sir.
Then, sir, is there any protection plant varieties? I've answered that. Please post your questions or queries. If any. Okay, that's okay. Nanoparticles, I've answered that question. I've adequately addressed it. Okay, that's all that I see. My email ID is there with you all. If anyone has any further questions, you're most welcome to send me a mail and give me a couple of days so that I can respond to you in more detail. If you need any further information also, you're most welcome to connect up with me. I'll be happy to share.
There is a question from Karthikeyan, sir. Is trade dress comes under the infringement of trademark?
Yeah, trade dress is a part of trademarks protection. It comes within the scope of Trademarks Act. Yeah, that's the answer.
So hope there are no more questions, I guess. So I think we can formally close the session. So let me deliver the vote of thanks. So firstly, I would like to thank the management and the principal for the support to organize this wonderful session. So in view of the World IP Day. And also I would like to thank Dr. Dhanalakshmi for getting the resource person contacts through IIT Pulse. And secondly, we would like to thank the resource person of the day, Mr. N.K. Raju, for really accepting our invite and taking us through what is IP and how the process of filing patents in other countries and India, and the policies of IP and loss of IP. And lastly, we would like to thank all the participants of this session for actively taking part in this session. So thank you all. And participants, please fill the feedback form posted in the chat section, and you will receive the e-certificates upon submission of the forms in a couple of days. Thank you all. Thank you.